Call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Committee of Adjustment meeting of August 20, 2019. My name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair for today's meeting. This is a meeting of Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment is composed of 5 citizen members who are appointed by the Brampton City Council. The committee is authorized by the Ontario Planning Act to consider application for minor variance from the provision of the City of Brampton zoning bylaw. The committee also considered application for consent, sometime referred to as land division applications, which includes severing a new lot from an existing lot, a lot addition easement, mortgages, or leases in excess of 21 years. To my immediate, I would like to introduce the committee members. To my immediate left, member Desiree Dorfler. To my far left, member Rod Power. To my immediate right, member David Cole. And my name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair. Member Anna Christina Marcus has sent her regrets for today's meeting. Seated at the table in front of the committee is Ms. Jeannie Myers, Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment. And seated near the podium, we have city staff who will assist the committee today. Staff, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Ian Shaw, Development Planner.
Good morning. My name is Himanshu Katyal, Development Planner.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Corazola. I'm the Manager of Zoning and Sign Bylaw Services.
Right on time. Bernie Steiger, Manager, Development Services.
Thank you. Before we consider today's application, the committee has some procedural matter to take care of. And the first is adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on July 30th, 2019. Has been presented in today's agenda. Committee members, any question, concern? Seeing none, then looking for a motion to approve these minutes. Motion to approve by Mr. Cobb, seconded by Mr. Power. All in favor? The next item we have is declaration of interest. Does any member have a declaration of pecuniary interest to declare on any matter being discussed today? Seeing none, I do have one. Application A19137, previous working relationship as a client. And the next is withdrawal or deferrals. For this meeting, we have one deferral request. It's staff supported, and application A19145. So is anyone present for this application? Property located on 3 Adwick Drive, Brampton. Ms. Myers, since we already have the written request and committee members, any question? Well, there's no one to answer, but maybe you can ask questions to staff. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please comment on this?
So to you, Mr. Chair, yes, we're in support of the deferral to see we can have further discussions as it relates to the variance itself. So we understand the applicant's agreeable to it. So.
And until September the 10th. So that's where the timeline we are putting on this one.
Yeah, the next meeting, yeah, which is that's the 10th, yes.
Yeah, pretty much September the 10th.
Yeah.
Just a question, Ms. Myers, is that okay for the circulation purpose? So committee members, looking for a motion for application A191-145 to defer to September the 10th. A motion by Ms. Doffler, seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor? It's deferred to September 10th. Anybody else, any application today, would like to seek, sir? After, okay, you think you're going to take longer? Sure. Please come to the podium. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is and the property address, subject property address is 7956 Torbram Road, Unit 20. I would, and this is application A19140. I would like to ask for a deferral max up to October 1st, probably first or second meeting. The reason is I just got this report today morning from Jeannie. I was talking, just picked up now. I would like to prepare myself for this. I would like to go through this and come back again.
Sure. Normally, the standard procedure is the city send out all the correspondence.
Yeah.
So you must have got somewhere in the mail, or maybe it's just misplaced or something.
I was talking to Ginny this morning. The first communication I got was in the Canada Post mail, and this was she said that she sent it to me in the email, and I could not find it yet. So maybe it got lost somewhere or something happened.
Through the chair, I just want to confirm for the record that the staff recommendation report was emailed to the agent, as is to all agents for applications that come before the committee. It actually was emailed on Friday morning, just shortly before 10 a.m. The email address was provided by the applicant on the application, which is our source of information to get that information out to the applicants.
Okay, so are you representing yourself, or you have an agent? Maybe your agent received that email, or maybe just went to the junk box?
It was myself actually, and I'll have to go back. I was communicating with Ginny on the email, so I'll have to. I was on the way here actually. I'll have to go back and look at the emails again. So.
No problem. Any question, committee members so far? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, what's your opinion about maximum up to 2 meetings you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So that means if you're prepared before, you can come in the very next meeting?
Definitely, I'll try my best.
And in that case, just a question to Ms. Myers, for the circulation purpose, if the applicant wants to just come in very next meeting, what's the deadline by when they need to come and file?
Through the chair, I'm going to defer that to staff.
Okay. Staff, your comments on this application, please?
Through the chair, in terms of timing one meeting or another, I wouldn't say that it matters too much necessarily, unless if the applicant wanted to come in and discuss the matters of the application with us. If they're, for whatever reason, then they might want more time, but otherwise, for our purposes, I think the next meeting would be fine, unless if we need more discussion. So.
Okay, so I believe maximum up to 2 meetings is fairly genuine. It's not that long. Committee members, any comments about that? Like, is it okay on this one? Yeah. Maximum up to 2 meetings?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So would you like to put forward a motion to defer to?
Yeah, motion to defer for the 2 meetings.
Up to maximum up to
maximum 2 meetings for the October. What's the date on that?
It's October 1st.
October 1st.
Okay, so motion put forward by Mr. Cobb. Do we have seconder? Seconded by Ms. Duffler. All in favor? This is deferred, sir.
Thank you so much.
Please get in touch with staff, and for the future correspondence, check your junk mailbox.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Colin Chung of Glenn Chung Associates. I'm here seeking a deferral of an application B18-027. Its municipal address is 10534 here on Ontario Street. It's at the southwest corner of Sandalwood Parkway and here on Ontario Street. This is an application, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, that's been before you several times. Just give a little bit of background, just a reminder. Prior to the applicant taking possession of this property, the previous owner of this property tried to bring Costco into Brampton, the second store for Costco into Brampton. The previous owner and Costco were engaged in negotiations on that. It didn't pan out. Costco did not come. And the previous owner sold the property to the current owner, who's the applicant to this consent application. And with your patient indulgence, this is not the first time for deferral. There were 4 deferrals granted on this property. And the reason for those deferrals in the past by the committee was that when the current owner took possession, they were trying to find a, I guess, financially sustainable option to develop this property. And I can say this before I start off, that there's a common interest between the city of Brampton and the landowner to develop this property for industrial, and that we know for certain. So the current owner tried to find a financially sustainable way of developing this property by seeking consent or severance of the lot adjacent to Ontario Street. But at the same time, we sought deferral of that consent application because the current owner, as you recall, were in negotiation with a potential joint venture partner to finance this project. The joint venture discussions did not really proceed. The joint venture partner decided to opt out of the partnership. So currently, the applicant is in negotiations now with a new purchaser. And I can certainly disclose this information because I think the new purchaser went to the city and talked to city staff about this site. The new purchaser, they're prominent industrial developers called Hopewell Developments. And so they have this property under contract, and it was intended that they were supposed to close before today's committee meeting. However, the applicant had granted extension to the contract to August 27th. And the reason for that is that the Hopewell, who may be the new purchaser, owner of this property, are looking to resolve a future right-of-way that would extend into this property. And I believe, as even today, this is the last meeting today, the Hopewell's meeting with city's Lectra to confirm and verify exactly how the future road alignment would encroach onto this property. So they had this meeting, and the offer was extended to August 27th. It's the last extension by the applicant to the new buyer. On that basis, I'm seeking your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, to seek one last deferral. And I would be happy to come back to September hearing. And I'm seeking any indefinite, come back to September, only for the purpose of facilitating Hopewell to see if they can actually resolve their future road right-of-way issue with Electra today. If that happens, Hopewell will proceed with acquisition and development of the site for industrial. If that happens, Mr. Chairman, there's no need for the consent application to proceed because Hopewell has different vision of how they want to develop this property than the current owner, the applicant. So simply in seeking one last deferral. I will not be before you for another deferral to facilitate this negotiation or contract to be completed between Hopewell and the current owner. And so if this application comes back in September, I think that would enable some certainty or understanding or finality to the offer. And if Hopewell does purchase the property, it's my expectation that this application would be withdrawn.
Mr. Chung, as you mentioned, we already granted 4 deferrals on this application.
Yes, we did.
Majority of the committee members were not even on the board since this application we are dragging. Last year, right? And I went pretty much out of the way to grant the last deferral on this application. For 1 year, these negotiations has been going on, right? And unfortunately, somehow we are quite lenient, but I don't want to set something, that anyone can walk in and ask for anything. There's so much work for us to carry, and I personally, I'm not in favor of granting any more deferrals, but it's up to the committee how they want to deal with it. Because I was interim chair at that time when I granted deferral. 4 times I supported the deferrals on this application, knowingly that staff staff's position is completely different what the applicant want. So anyway, it's up to the committee how they feel about this. If you are requesting the deferral in September meeting, which is September the 10th, immediate next meeting, what really your applicant is going to achieve in these 21 days? What they did not achieve in 1 year? Like what kind of negotiation has been going on? Like, you know, I know you are presenting them well and they are in good hands by you being here. And I am more sympathized when I grant the deferral last year, in the previous meeting, I think that was 2 or 3 meetings, and that was me who suggested that instead of just asking for a 1 meeting, you should ask for like a couple of months or 3, 4, 5 meetings. So at least we have given enough time. We are here to find a solution, but not, you know, keep delaying things. That is something, in my honest opinion, I'm not in agreement. But committee members, and if you want to respond to
Sure.
that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely understand and sympathize, and I acknowledge your impatience and your reluctance. This application has been before you for many deferrals. I'm not here to try to set precedents. It's a very unique situation with this site. Like I said, between the City of Brampton and the owners, would it be previous or current or maybe the future owners, there's a common interest to develop the site as expeditiously as possible to generate jobs, generate business tax base. And the deferrals that I sought before you were not, in my opinion, a way to delay the application, but trying to find time or create time to enable certain financial discussion to take place. And even the deferral request today is simply for one reason only. The timing of this hearing with the deadline for the conditional period for the purchase and sale agreement with Hopewell Developments doesn't match. The deadline for that deal is August 27th. So my hope is that with one last deferral to September, it would enable at least that contract negotiations or contract conclusion to take place on August 27th. If on August 27th, with the committee's indulgence for one last deferral, Hopewell decides to buy this property, I think the city then understands that Hopewell will develop the site for industrial. If Hopewell, for whatever reason, decides on August 27th not to proceed with acquisition of this property, then I'll be before you in September to deal with the application. And without getting into too much detail about why the application was filed in order for the owner and the City of Brampton to garner a early development of this site as opposed to waiting for a planning approval process to take place that may take 2 years. So we're trying to find amicable, creative ways to develop this site early. And it's really for the benefit of public interest, because it's creating jobs and tax base for the City of Brampton. So I'm prepared to deal with this application, but I said if we allow 1 more month, it may negate this application proceeding because Hopewell on August 27th, hopefully, will decide to buy this property and develop their industrial projects that they develop all over the GTA. If that happens, then I don't need to deal with this application with the current owner. So, Mr. Chairman, I completely understand the committee's feeling about the number of deferrals that were granted on this site. I hope you don't see me as somebody taking advantage of your indulgence. But this deferral request this morning, last one, in my opinion, would be to ensure that the Hopewell, the new owner, hopefully, can develop this site on August 27th, where they confirm with the City of Brampton that they're going to be the new owners developing this industrial property. And it's simply, that's the only thing I'm trying to facilitate. If the deferral is not granted today, I'll have to deal with this application. the end result of me dealing with this application may have implications to Hopewell's decision to acquire this property. And that's the reason why I'm seeking deferral. That's why the owners of this property today is hoping to get a deferral so that Hopewell can make their decision simply on one issue that's left on this property, which is future right-of-way extension onto this property that they need to have, call it certainty with Electra this morning. So they're meeting actually this morning with Electra, which is a city utilities infrastructure group today.
They are located to the next door, I guess.
Yeah, that's the request. This is a conversation that I had with them at 10:30 last night. And both the owner, the applicant, and Hopewell Developments are on site about one more deferral.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Committee members, any comments at this point, or should we ask staff's opinion first? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Chair. So we are also of the understanding that there is a parallel process going on as it relates to this property. We had a pre-consultation application submitted for a plan of subdivision and then other, and a bylaw amendment at least by another applicant. We're also in the midst of preparing a report to council for September 9th to help facilitate that proposal. So for us, it's serious. So what that would be is to allow them to make their official plan amendment, and the plan amendment would be as with regard to the realignment, I guess, of Widening or Railside Drive as it's shown in the secondary plan. So, and their proposal would require an adjustment to that. So, since the secondary plan here is a newly adopted one, we have to. There's rules in the Planning Act saying that you can't amend it unless council provides an exemption. So we're preparing that report. So we're facilitating their, I guess, their desire to move forward with that pre-consultation and then subsequently that process. So just wanted to provide that as background, and we're also of the understanding that they're meeting today, as Mr. John has stated, with Electra Utilities regarding potential for that road. So while staff's position on this application won't change the one we have here, I don't necessarily have a concern with the further deferral at this time. So we're not
Sorry?
Because ultimately, if that project proceeds, then I would expect that this application would fall away, this one that we have in front of you.
Okay. I understand this is not one of those applications where timeline, obviously, if it came many, many times, we need to deal with it. But having all the discussions, I don't want to say I changed my mind, but I'm okay for one more deferral. Right? So it's for September the 10th.
Yeah.
Motion to defer by Mr. Powwow for September the 10th. We give a seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So just to let you know, we have done way more for the public interest. So.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman,
No
and the
problem.
committee. I think I broke a record for the number of deferrals on one application today.
Thank you. Anybody else seeking for a withdrawal or deferral? Excuse me, seeing none. For those unfamiliar with the Committee of Adjustment procedure and process, I would like to give a brief explanation and scope. Following some procedural matter that we have already undergone, the Secretary-Treasurer will call the applications by announcing the application number, the name of the applicant, and address of the property. Subject to the application, the applicant or authorized agent presenting the application Applicant will then come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and then present the application. I request that you reserve any questions or comments pertaining to the staff report until after the planning staff has had an opportunity to present. If there is anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to a particular application, you will be given the opportunity to do so when the application is presented. Any decision made here today may be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, previously through the Ontario Municipal Board. Appeals received in the city clerk's office associated with minor variance and consent application will be processed and forwarded to the LPAT. This process may be commenced with the Secretary Treasurer by filing a completed appeal form and filing fee within the prescribed 20-day appeal period. Information pertaining to the appeal process may be obtained by contacting the Secretary Treasurer within the City Clerk's office. Now we move on to the new consent application, but Ms. Myers, can we ask this young lady which application she's here for? Maybe we can bring her first, if committee is okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Ma'am, with the youngest person in the audience, could you please tell us why you're here for which application?
Yeah, I'm here. Should I stay here or come back?
You can come here. Normally we have our different order, but since you're here with the little one, we just want to ask you.
Okay, thank you very much for calling my attention because I wanted to know if I'm supposed to be here in the first place. That was why I was asking her. I got a letter. I own a property behind Tim Hortons. And in the letter, I read it, but I really don't understand how I'm being affected. So that's why I'm here.
Just two things. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Augusta. The month of August plus A, Osunde.
Could you please spell it?
Augusta, and my last name is Osunde.
And your address, please?
10 Owl Perch Court in Brampton.
Okay. And, sorry, continue. You are here for? What's the application number on the letter?
Okay. Application number is B19022.
Okay, so that's on Peter Robinson and Dixie area?
Correct.
So you are the concerned neighbor?
Yeah.
Okay, so luckily your application is on number 1 in the item anyway. So you can have your seat back. The agent will come. So they are requesting for, so whatever the operations are going on, they're asking for to continue to extend the lease for the Tim Horton.
To extend the lease.
Yes.
So Tim Hortons, to my
Tim Horton is staying there. Don't worry, he's not.
Yeah, to my understanding, they lease the property and they want to extend. So I'm wondering why they sent me a letter for me to be here. That's just my concern. I own the property.
So, sure, under the Planning Act, if anything happens around our neighborhood, wherever we have a business or we live, in certain radius, that's city's responsibility to inform everyone that this has been asked by this individual in your neighborhood.
Okay.
So you can give your input, how you feel, whether you're not happy with something is happening in your neighborhood, or if you're okay with. So this is the standard procedure. That's why they just notify the neighbors.
Oh, okay.
But that's so nice of you to come forward.
Yeah, I just wanted to
and
know. I
taking
just
the
want to
time
know what is
out
going
of your
on.
busy schedule.
And if I'm being affected in one way or the other, I just
Right.
want to know.
So if you can please have a seat when the applicant, their agent will come, and you will get to hear what they are exactly asking.
Okay.
And if you have any question, you can again raise your hand,
Okay.
and you can submit your concerns.
Thank you so much.
Okay? Thank you. Ms. Myers, if you can please call.
Calling application B19022, Woodsmere Shopping Center, Inc. Property is located at 624 Peter Robertson Boulevard.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, staff, and members. My name is Daniel Huang, and I'm with Dillon Consulting Limited, and I am the authorized agent for Woodsmere Shopping Center, Inc., who is the applicant for this consent. I am here today to request and consent for a long-term lease in excess of 21 years between the applicant, Woodsmere Shopping Center, and TDL Corporation, which operates as Tim Hortons at 624 Peter Robertson Boulevard in Brampton.
Okay. Committee members, any question, comment, concern? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Staff, could you please begin your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff has undertaken a thorough review of this proposal relative to the relevant provisions prescribed within the Planning Act and advise that the proposed consent application is supportable.
Okay. We don't have any conditions here, but Secretary, Treasurer, there's two draft conditions. You understand and accept those ones?
Yes, we understand the two conditions, and we do accept them.
Okay. So, committee members, motion.
Through you, sorry, just a question to the applicant, through you, Chair.
Sure.
I have no questions in terms of the lease, actually, but Tim Hortons is always a successful operation. And in this case, I was there on the Sunday, and traffic was really bad. It was stopped along the main thoroughfare. Has there been any traffic study done prior to Tim Hortons coming in? I know that there's construction that they're undergoing, so that may be...
Yep. Since it is a shopping center, there was a traffic study that was done previously, and as well before when the site plan was created for this Tim Hortons back in 2000. It's possible that in the 19 years since it's been in operation that there's been changes in the traffic congestion, and so there possibly might be the need for an update, but there hasn't been anything done since the initial traffic study.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, just if I could ask staff if there's an impact, if we saw a situation and we're bringing it to the forefront, how that plays into this application, if at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the best of my knowledge, the property does and continues to comply with the minimum stacking space requirements of the zoning bylaw, which for any restaurant drive-through would be a minimum of 10 spaces. I don't believe that there have been any variances to either alter the parking configuration or the required number of drive-through stacking spaces. It's just a popular location and is a successful business in that. I mean, it's not uncommon for a Tim Hortons, I'll be quite honest with you, to have overflow stacking.
I guess that's not the question. It stopped traffic along the main road because people couldn't come in because they just couldn't get through quickly enough. So I just saw that as a bit of a hazard. That was Sunday around noon. I don't know what it's like during business hours during the week. So it was just an observation and a question.
Maybe there was some special sale on Sunday afternoon.
It's summer, people want their ice caps. Yeah.
So, if are we okay to proceed? Okay, so do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve
Draft the conditions here.
by Mr. Cobb, seconded by Mr. Power. All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling applications B19-003 and related application A19-034, Harinder Singh, 2185715 Ontario Inc. Property is located at 11570 McBean Drive.
Good morning, members of the committee.
Morning.
My name is Eric Mersu. I'm the agent here on behalf of the owner at 11570 McBean Drive. And we're coming back here. I guess this had been previously, in front of committee to request a consent to sever a parcel of property, which is approximately 0.66 hectares, of which the remainder, or the retained parcel, will be developed as a future subdivision.
Okay. Sure. Committee members, any questions? Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Staff, could you please weigh in your comment? And I would request maybe another staff member can explain to the lady that application is already dealt with. She's fully free. Okay, yes.
Through the chair, with respect to application B19-003, I'll explain our conditions for A19-034 after this. Staff are in support of this consent application. They did make some changes from the original application that came in. Hence, we had requested refusal the first couple of times. They made some changes. Now staff are in support, subject to the following conditions. These are conditions that I'm going to state that are in addition to the standard conditions that are provided by the Secretary-Treasurer. So we are recommending, we are in support of it, subject to the following conditions being imposed. Number one, prior to the issuance of the Certificate of Secretary-Treasurer, the owner be required to enter into consent agreement for the severed and the retained lands to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Development Services and the City Solicitor. The consent agreement shall generally include provisions including, but not limited to, the following. A, that the severed and retained lands shall only be developed through a plan of subdivision or potentially a site plan associated with a plan of subdivision and or a plan of condominium if deemed appropriate. Number two, that the applicant shall gratuitously convey to the city the following. A 7.8 meter road widening along McBean Drive, a temporary grading easement to the satisfaction of the Commission of the Public Works and Engineering, and C, a permanent easement for a city storm infrastructure to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering. Number three, that an access easement be established over the severed lands in favor of the retained lands to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering. Number four, that the applicant provide documentation to confirm compliance to the building department that the on-site septic system associated with the existing residence on the proposed severance lot be contained within the same severed lot with a minimum 3 meter setback to any property line to the satisfaction of the chief building official. And finally, number five, that the alignment of the lot line be confirmed by the TRCA and the City of Brampton with respect to the line limit of development line staked with TRCA on November 13th as indicated on the public notice. And I'm not sure if you want to deal with that firstly and then go to the minor variance application, or whether you want to discuss both of them at the same time.
Ms. Myers, can we discuss both at the same time? Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Just one quick, we don't need to add failure to comply on this one? The condition? No, we don't need?
That's a standard condition that I believe is included within the Secretary-Treasurer's standard conditions.
Okay. Okay, we can go with the variance application.
So there's an associated minor variance application, and it is for the lot that's being created as a result of this of the severance. It requires a variance to the lot area, a reduction from 0.8 hectares to 0.66 hectares. Staff are in support of that reduction, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that a minimum lot frontage of 85 meters be provided, and B, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any question, comment? None? Sir, you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, those are acceptable.
As well, some draft conditions by Secretary Treasurer?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support these, approve both of these applications with conditions. Motion by Mr. Duffler, second by Mr. Cobb. All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-014, Harinder Singh Samal and Kemal Creek Corps. The property is located at 10387 McBean Drive.
Again, I'll be here a few times today, so just a heads up.
No problem.
Okay. So we're representing the owner as well at 10387 McBean Drive. It's currently a residential property with a single detached dwelling. And we're requesting from the committee permission to expand and relocate a portion of the house as an addition in a floodplain zone. The main reason for the addition and the relocation is because the house that's currently sitting on the property is on a Trans-Canada easement, and we are removing that portion off that easement and putting it on the other side of the property. So it is going to improve, I guess, the lot in that sense and make it a little easier for access for Trans-Canada, but they do want to put an addition on the other side of the building where there is no easement.
Okay, sure. Committee members, any comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff are supportive of this application, subject to the following conditions being imposed. One, that the associated site plan application SP 18-113 be approved within 120 days of the decision of the committee, or as extended as the discretion of the Director of Development Services upon a written request for extension from the owner. 2, the owner shall obtain a permit to demolish the existing detached garage within 60 days of the decision of the approval. 3, Trans-Canada Pipeline provide written consent for the stair structure and the driveway located within the Trans-Canada Pipeline easement area. 4, drawing number 100 be approved by TRCA and a permit amendment be issued if applicable by TRCA. 5, the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch drawing number A100 attached to the report. 6, failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render its approval null and void.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, we do have a correspondence from TRCA suggesting conditional approval. I guess those conditions are already covered with your recommendations?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Rosella.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may make just one small requested change to the condition. Condition number 4 references the drawing number A100 attached to the report. It would be my preference from an enforcement and application perspective that sketch be attached to the decision. So if I could ask the committee to make that change simply rather than saying attached to the report, attached to the decision of the Committee of Adjustment.
That's fine. That's it?
Thank you, yes.
No problem. Any comments? None? You understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, we were good with them.
Okay, then looking for a motion to proceed. Motion by Mr. Powwow with amended conditions. Seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-132, Kalissa Maharaj. The property is located at 86 Hudson Drive.
Anyone here for 86 Hudson Drive?
Yes, good morning.
You forgot about your application?
Sorry, I was,
No problem.
My name is Mazhar from Caprija Corporation. I'm an authorized agent appointed by the owner.
Mazhar Raza, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have your address, I guess, otherwise. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, we are asking for side door entrance.
Mhm.
The required setback is 1.2 meters, but we have 0.94 meters. So we are asking for a variance, and for the same, we need
The variance for path of travel.
for the path of travel as well, for the same way. So because path of travel is required 1.2 meters, and we are deficient of 0.9 meters.
Okay, sure. Committee members, any comment, question, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the application is proposing two variances. First is to permit an above-grade door, side door with a reduced setback, and the second variance is to permit path of travel to the primary entrance of a second unit with a reduced setback. I'd like to speak about variance 2 before reading my conditions. So the second variance is requesting to permit a path of travel in association with second unit. The official plan provides direction for second units that in case where a second unit application fails to conform to any of the requirements of the zoning bylaw, a zoning bylaw amendment shall be required. This variance does not meet the intent of the official plan, does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, is not considered desirable for the appropriate development of the land, and cannot be considered minor in nature. Hence, application A19-132 is supportable in part, subject to following conditions being recommended. 1, that variance 2 be refused. 2, that the extent of variance 1 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. 3, that the owner shall obtain a building permit within 60 days of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment. 4, that the side yard entrance shall not be used to access a registered or unregistered second dwelling unit. And 5, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay. You understand and
Yeah,
accept these
we
conditions?
understand the condition and accept that.
Okay. Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed with staff's recommendations by Mr. Cobb, seconded by Mr. Stoffler. All in favor? It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-133, Gurmeet Powwow and Siddiqui Powwow. The property is located at 38 Sheridan Street.
Good morning. My name is Arshad Siddiqui, architect and authorized agent for owners for the property at 38 Sheringham Street. as per the drawing, you can see there is an as-built below-grade entrance, and which has reduced the depth of garage to 4.87 meters. There is also an as-built side yard entrance. In order to regularize the basement apartment, we need 3 car parking spaces. We have more than enough space to park 2 parking spaces on the driveway, and the third one has to go inside the garage. So through this application, my clients and owners are requesting a relief of 0.53 meters in the one of the 3 parking spaces. If we go through the staff report,
One of the 3 or specifically inside the garage?
especially inside the garage, one of the 3 has to go inside because we don't have enough space on driveway to park 3 car parkings. So third one has to go inside, and the depth required by zoning bylaw is 5.4, whereas we have 4.87. Our proposal complies with Ontario Building Code, have no negative impact on stormwater management, on drainage on site, or any exterior, must be consistent with existing design style and materials of the dwelling. It is also confirmed by the report that the reduction result in 0.53 meter will still be adequately enough to size any range of automobiles. Let me share you a quick study of some of the automobiles normally owned by homeowners. So you can see up to small SUVs and full-size sedans can be parked in the available space, available depth. The large SUV and pickups are going to cause trouble, but a range of automobiles can still be parked in 4.87 meter depth. It is also confirmed by the report that there is no significant impact on the function of the property, and it doesn't or any issue with the providing an adequate number of parking spaces, like 3 parking spaces, and there is no significant impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So therefore, we request committee members to grant us the relief of 0.53 meter and get going with the building permit for basement apartment.
Sure. Let's have some discussion about it. Committee members, any comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this proposal is similar to the previous proposal that we discussed, in that the proposal is seeking for a parking space depth reduction in association with a second unit. The official plan clearly states that if a second unit application fails to conform to the zoning bylaw requirements, a zoning bylaw amendment application shall be required. Hence, this variance does not meet the intent of the official plan. It cannot be considered desirable for the appropriate development of land and cannot be considered minor in nature. So it fails 3 out of 4 tests. Hence, this application is not supportable.
Okay. In your application, I see 1 MLS listing and 2-bedroom basement apartment with separate entrance. I do not agree with this because it's just an agent who can write it down unless apartment is the one is legalized. So if it says on the listing, that's not enough for us to follow those guidelines. However, if your client feels something is written on the listing as a statement and it's not true, they can contact their lawyer who closed the transaction, and they may contact title insurance. They can contact with them if they feel something is not what they purchased. But many members, in regards to staff's comment, any comments, any questions?
if I can add one more point, that there has been some precedence of approving minor variance application about driveway depth and width as per City of Brampton's website, though they were for commercial properties. So this one can be the first one for residential category when we have enough information that.
Let me correct you here, sir. Each and every application is separate, different. We have approved some even residential properties in this board. I don't know before me, but please continue. What's yours?
Oh, this was but just my random search. Maybe there are cases in residential, but I could not find any precedence. But this was a request that 3 out of 1 parking space can accommodate a decent sized car, and we humbly request to consider this application.
I'll just have a question to maybe Ms. Corozzola can answer that better. About these car depths the gentleman was showing, is that something, how we look at into these ones?
Well, certainly the car depths are available on any website if you're looking into the specifications for certain vehicles. I can confirm that the minimum parking space depth for any parking space in the city, whether it's in a parking lot or a residential driveway, is 5.4 meters. The proposal before you today is for a reduction of almost 2 feet, 1.7 meters in reduced depth. Certainly larger, and they've got large SUVs. For a small SUV may fit in there, obviously bumper to bumper between the garage door and the wall of that below grade entrance. So there would be very little room inside the garage for parking a sort of a standard size or a mid full size sedan type vehicle. I can certainly confirm that the official plan policy, as the planner has noted, does require that where the implementing zoning provisions for the creation of a secondary unit are not met, that the official plan does require a rezoning amendment rather than approval through this committee of a minor variance. I certainly leave it in the committee's hands as to whether what's proposed meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act as would be required. But I can confirm that any parking space depth, and specifically for a secondary unit where 3 parking spaces are required over and above the standard 2 parking spaces, which would still be maintained on this property on the driveway, should this variance not be approved.
This garage, even the listing says 2 spaces. I don't think so you can fit 2 cars in, but I would say it's garage and half.
Garage is 1.5 car parking, so we can fit 1 car, and the depth is just not complying with the zoning bylaw. But the intent of zoning bylaw can be confirmed because we can have a range of automobiles fit in there, so 1 out of 3 car can be parked inside.
Because when I was there at my site visit, I saw the cars outside, but the garage door was locked, so I didn't get an opportunity to see inside. Is the homeowner park cars inside?
No, they do not.
Yeah, you can come here.
Yeah, so when we bought the house, initially we used to park our car inside. Then I used to have 2 cars. My wife used to have 1 car and I used to have 1 car. So, but my wife, she doesn't drive anymore. So we have 1 car and I park my car outside. But the car, any of the cars, as we mentioned, fits inside the car. And on the driveway also 3 cars can fit in, but obviously, it's been going on like this for whenever the house was there. The basement apartment's been there for more than 25 years, and people, the neighbors tell us people before us have been using it as well. So in terms of the park, a specific question of car, can the car fit inside? Yes. Car definitely fits inside.
Your garage is more of to me, it's more like a habitable space. The way you have put forward because Mr. Power has
Yes,
some
but
pictures.
at the moment, that's why I say, we don't park the car inside anymore, but because we just have one car and it's good enough to be parked outside.
But the planning does not look the way you're saying, which I'm not disputing. If you don't need to park, you can simply, you cannot, if you don't need to park, you don't need to, but this is something we are looking different, because if by law it's allowable to park inside or not. So at this point, I don't know how committee feels. We can certainly look into it, but I tend to agree with staff on this, even though you can park on the boulevard portion as well. I have seen some people, they park parallel to their garage door.
Yeah, it all started, with the intent of re-legalizing the basement unit, right? The basement's been there for 25 years. It's being used the way it is being used for more than 25 years. So we wanted to actually, when we wanted to legalize, the stairs are built from the garage. In the drawing, you've seen that, right? So if we take that stairs out and if we have to plan other entrance and stuff, it's like more than $50,000-$60,000 of thing.
I fully agree with you. My
I mean the intention.
what my personal opinion should not be. My honest opinion is I'm not in favor of entrances from the garage for the safety perspective. Period. Because of carbon monoxide and so forth. I personally, I'm not in favor of, especially the dig-in entrances. That's my personal opinion. If someone's garage is fairly large and they can accommodate the car, that is totally different. But even if, doesn't matter if 25 years or 20 years, we don't look at that criteria. If something was happening wrong for 20 years, it's not going to go forward. Or even the previous maybe 5 owners were using the same practice, and unfortunately it's you now, but and I feel for you for that reason, but that's not the criteria we look. Each and every application present in front of us, even there's 10 owners or there was no issues, unless it's legal non-conforming use, your agent can explain you better. In other terms, we use the term grandfather. If something then it's completely different, then you would not be here, I guess. But in this case, it's up to the committee how the committee feels. And anything else you wish to add to your submissions, your closing, you can certainly.
I think to respond to your concern about carbon monoxide, so the entrances can be fire protected and separated with a rated wall. We can do all other measures to protect that and address that concern. But I do understand that.
Fully understandable on those terms.
Yeah.
Further, you're going to create a barrier or a wall which is going to reduce the depth?
No, there is already a wall.
Right? Yeah, I saw the picture. It's already
There's
a
already
wall
a
there.
wall. Yeah, we will make it fire separated, one with appropriate fire rating. But I guess it's more of a humble request because of the financial situation of my client, that this will going to cost him a good number of dollars.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I can. I'm more than reasonable on any of these applications in pretty much my last 5 years on this board, and I always try to find the solution which is good pretty much for everybody. But sometimes some of these applications comes where for the greater good you need to make a decision. So it's up to the committee, how the committee feels. Committee member, any question, comment, concern? If not, then looking for the motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed, not supportable. I'm going to go with staff's recommendation further.
So is that the motion, Mr. Gove?
Yes. Not to support this.
Okay, so motion on the floor by Mr. Cobb to go with staff's recommendation by not supporting this application. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor?
Thank you.
Unfortunately, the committee does not feel, but maybe you can work with the staff to find some alternates.
Yeah, but the thing is, when the city came up with this idea of legalizing this second units, I believe their main intent was to, first was affordable housing, another was to make sure the people living in the basements are safe.
And that's one of the safety measures, I guess, the city feels it's not right, and that's why they have all these bylaws and guidelines.
Yeah, so we're, so this is, the car parking, I believe, is not a safety issue. I mean, other safety issues, whatever are required, we are ready to comply with that. And just on the car parking thing, this is not a safety issue as far as I understand. And if the city members or if the staff have any concerns regarding safety, we are ready to address that. And this not being a safety issue, like if you're just going ahead just based on if you're going ahead and we are following the law in letter, but kind of killing the spirit behind it. Parking, as far as parking is concerned, it's not a safety issue, and cars can still fit in. I know it might sound like an emotional appeal, but
No. I, sir, fully sympathize with your concerns, but at the same time, the safety measure for you could be different than for me.
yeah.
I could be more concerned for my family, or if I'm your tenant in the basement. If it's a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, if I'm your tenant, my family size could be different. I might need some space to walk. I might need some space to get out from your garage. But again, this is lots of gray area, and that's why we have these bylaws. Again, fully sympathize to what you just said, and I respect that. But the rules are there for us. I understand the rules are man-made, and it can be changed. And but I guess the majority has already spoke. But the staff has done their due diligence, and they have done all the measurements. But I know, I understand where you're coming from. What my advice is at this point is the discussion is already over on this application, but you can certainly work with staff to find the solution on this. Maybe by doing some adjustments, you comply with the bylaw, or the depth might be increased. If the size of your steps are going down to the basement, if they are already maybe slightly large, then the bylaw, you can do all those measurements again. Maybe you can work with staff to do some minor adjustments on those, and if the depth of the garage can be increased a bit, and then I guess in those circumstances, there might be a solution, and you might need to go through another alternate.
So is local planning appeal tribunal another option for us?
You can. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, can you turn on?
Through you, Mr. Chair. If in the listing it said secondary dwelling, and it's something that you can get monetary value for, then it's a legal matter and you should contact a lawyer. That's the route you should probably go.
Right. Yeah.
That's right, yeah, but I'm not taking, like, whatever is required to legalize, we are ready to do it, apart from just the parking issue.
Well, again, and your name is Mr. Powwow, right?
Gurmeet, yeah.
Mr. Powwow, this committee already dealt with this application.
Yeah.
But as Mr. Power mentioned, I don't know when you purchased your property, but it mentioned it's an apartment, and it was not an apartment when you purchased. So you can certainly discuss with your lawyer if maybe you got something back.
That's again the thing, going through it's not a cheap option again, right? Going through all the things.
Well, small claim courts, I don't think so there, and I guess your agent can advise you on that. But in just my closing remarks, what I would say to the agent, you just mentioned about LPAT.
Yeah.
Certainly, there are appeal period, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. And you can contact with Secretary Treasurer after today's meeting.
Right.
That is one of the options if you wishes to go that route.
Right. Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Calling application A19-134, Matthew Filipuzzi and Stephanie Filipuzzi. The property is located at 43 Roberts Crescent.
Yes, good morning. My name is Brian Bargeman, 324 Elwood Drive West in Bolton. I'm here as the appointed agent for Matthew and Stephanie Filipuzzi of 43 Roberts Crescent. My clients seek to get two reliefs from zoning, one in regards to a front entrance extension, just to provide them a little more space in the house, and one to extend the covered front porch. And again, this is really just for a curb appeal point of view. They've lived here for some time now. They love their neighborhood. They love their property. It's just not a big enough house, so they need to expand.
Okay, sure. Committee members, any comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff's recommendation is that application A19-134 is supportable, subject to following conditions being recommended. One, that applicant shall, prior to construction of the porch and one-story front addition, provide snow fence tree protection around the large front tree at the canopy drip line and maintain the tree protection until the completion of construction to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. Two, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And three, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
So you understand and accept these conditions?
Absolutely.
I guess this is the right time to start the construction within the summer months. Can members, if no further question, then looking for the motion to proceed. Motion to staff recommendation by Mr. Powers, seconded by Staffler. All in favor? That's approved.
Good, thank you.
Calling application A19-135, Frank and Tracy Siderius. The property is located at 202 Archdeacon Drive.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Thank you for seeing us. We are Frank and Tracy Siderius, the owners of 202 Archdeacon Drive. The reason we're here is because we're requesting a rear yard setback and interior yard setback for proposed garage and a interior yard setback for an existing shed.
Okay, sure. Committee members, any comment, question, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff's recommendation is that application A19-135 is supportable, subject to following conditions being recommended. One, that variance 3 be refused and the existing shed be relocated. 2, that the drainage on adjacent properties shall not be adversely affected. 3, that the extent of the variances 1 and 2 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And 4, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Sir, you understand and accept these conditions?
I understand them. We're asking if you could please reconsider moving the shed.
I was there at your property, but there was some big risk of the dog for me to enter in your backyard. Sorry?
Oh, the dog was
Yeah, that's how.
Was the dog outside at the time?
No, that was, I think I knocked on your door as well for that reason, but I guess no one was home. So I didn't get a chance to. I did overlook through the fence, but if you have to shift or move the shed in terms of relocation, you still have some space on the concrete pad, or it's on the slabs?
It's on slabs, patio stones, and there is room to move it forward. However, it's going to be brute. As you can tell, it's solidly built, and the shed that the other existing shed that will be torn down upon approval has been there for about 16 years, and the only maintenance I've ever had to do on it is replace the shingles on the roof. They're 5-inch logs.
Yeah.
They're 5-inch logs, like stacked with 6-inch spikes, 4 spikes per row or per log. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to move it without maybe completely disassembling it. I thought about maybe jacking it up and rolling it forward. I don't know if that's even possible. So we're just begging your mercy. It's going to be many, many years before we'll need to do any maintenance on it.
Is there, at the back of the shed, the water is, I hope it's not going to the neighbor's property?
No, I took a video of Sunday's rainstorm.
So I'll interject there for a second, through the chair. I went to the backyard and I actually took a look at it. Yes, it is close to where the fence is, but it does leave about 3 or 4 inches, 5 inches from where it would drip down into the property line. So the water runoff does continue on into their own property. It is well-constructed shed. It's well laid out. And to move that based merely on how it's constructed is going to be difficult. It doesn't set to be an eyesore by any stretch of the imagination. And again, if the biggest concern is the drainage, I did take a look at that, and that was one of the things that I made sure that wasn't hanging over in the neighbors. And from my understanding, based on what I looked at, that fence was actually built on, the new fence that was constructed looked like it was more so built on your property line. And even with that, 4 to 6 inch variation, it's still coming down onto your own property line in terms of drainage. So I've got no issue with that shed being where it is.
Right. As for drainage, if drainage was an issue, we could put an east trough along the back. And then we'd be able to control. But I do have a video. I don't know if you want to.
No, that's fine. It's good enough discussion for us. I guess to echo Mr. Cobb's comments, I tend to agree that this is not something, those vinyl-based sheds where you can just simply move a little bit here and there. So I tend to agree that to granting that variance. If committee feels, majority of the committee feels the same, then we can ask the staff if we can amend these conditions to approve all 3 variances. Any suggestions? The recommendation number 1 to
It would just be removed to the chair. If the committee is considering supporting it, you would just not, you'd modify the conditions and just remove the first recommended condition that staff has.
Sorry?
The variances would just be supportable. And then,
Supportable, just if we remove condition number one,
Yeah.
just in terms of moving the shed.
that's right, yeah.
And also through you, Mr. Chair, amending condition 3 to move references to variances 1 and 2. So it simply states that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch.
Okay. Sir, you understand and accept these conditions?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Otherwise, committee can still change the mind. I don't want to say that, but anyway, no further discussion. Looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support amended conditions by Mr. Power, seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor? Supportable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-136, Pradeep and Kalawati Mahabar. The property is located at 170 Thornbush Boulevard.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning.
Sir, you wishes to add anything beside it's on your application?
Yeah, I discussed with the guy and he's make a recommendation, so I agree with that.
Sorry, you discussed with?
With the planner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any comment, questions at this point by committee members?
No.
Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, application A19-136 is supportable, subject to the following conditions being imposed. 1, that the requested variance shall be limited to a rear yard setback of 3.27 meters with a setback of 1.53 meters on the northeasterly side and 2.7 meters on the southeasterly side from the side property line. 2, that the proposed open-roofed porch shall maintain the setbacks to the side property lines in accordance with the sketch attached to the public notice. 3, that the open-roof porch shall be of an open-style construction with no side or rear walls. And 4, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay, thank you. Sir, do you understand and accept these conditions? Okay. Yes, are you in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were thinking a bit different, but your smile changes our mind. Anyway, if no further discussion, committee members would like to proceed. Motion to support staff recommendations by Mr. Power, seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor? It's approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Calling application
I'm stepping out.
Calling application A19-137, Ravinder and Ramanjit Tandel. The property is located at 147 Bell Chase Trail.
Good morning, I'm Ravinder Singh. I'm the agent on behalf of the owners for 147 Bell Chase Trail. And beside me is Mr. Ravinder Tandel. He's the owner of the property. So we are here to seek 3 minor variances, application for the existing deck, which is encroached to 2.16 meters into a 5-meter open space zone. So this backyard is basically facing, it's on a ravine lot, doesn't have any other properties behind this property. So we request to grant a minor variance for the existing deck.
Anybody in the audience that's here to speak on this application? Staff, would you like to provide your comments, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. The proposed variance 1 encroaches 2.16 meters into a 5-meter wide open space zone with a total depth of 4.87 meters. Typically permitted encroachment into the rear yard is 3 meters. Further, the deck covers approximately 2/3 of the width of the dwelling, which creates a sense of overdevelopment, would create privacy issues with adjacent properties due to its height, and is contrary to the intended effect of the open space zone, which is to not permit any structures or buildings in the open space zone, and the general restrictions for deck encroachment. The proposed variance 1 does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, cannot be considered desirable for the appropriate development of land, and cannot be considered minor in nature. The second and third variances are to permit an existing driveway width of 8.4 meters and 0 meter permeable landscape strip, respectively. The widened driveway goes beyond the intended function of the driveway, and it does not conform to the urban design guidelines. The 0 meter landscape strip removes the required landscape strip, which has a negative impact on the appearance of the streetscape. It relies on the neighbor maintaining their landscape strip and reduces the infiltration of water into the ground. The requested second and third variances do not meet the intent of the official plan, do not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. They cannot be considered desirable for the appropriate development of land and are not minor in nature. Hence, the application A19-137 is not supportable.
Thank you. Just make a note that we do have a letter from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority where they support conditional approval. Committee members, do you have any questions or comments?
No, in terms of the overall layout of the property, it is well kept. I did go by there, and I did have a look down both sides there. The majority of the houses in that area are all covered the exact same way in terms of the driveway, the walkway. I get the whole permeable landscape down the side there, but you know, just based on what I see in the property, the access to the rear yard, and how well kept it is, I've got zero issues with that property and moving forward and with what I see, you know, negating these conditions that have been given by staff. What do you guys think about that? If you guys had a look at it, but I like the way it was laid out, so it was very well kept. Good job.
Thank you.
Would you then be wanting to put forward a proposal?
I would, if you guys have any other comments to rein in on, if you got any concerns about anything. I personally like the way everything's done there. It's well kept, and I'm okay with moving forward. So.
Okay, so motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed, motion to approve, removing the condition, or the request, sorry, just staff's recommendation to remove them altogether and to support the application.
Seconder? Motion. Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Your application has been approved.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Calling up.
Calling application A19-138, Gary Wynn, Zaminda Wynn, and Katie Patel. The property is located at 94 Corkett Drive.
Hi, good morning. This is, my name is Ahmed Al-Kranshari. I'm the representative for my client for application A19-138. I'd like to add a small thing. We have received the staff report and we have it in consideration, but we still would like to keep the same condition as we proposed as is for the drive width and the landscape condition. And
Okay.
we are welcoming to answer any question from your staff members.
Sure, sure. Thank you, committee members. Any comment, question at this point?
No.
Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, no. So you are the property owner,
Correct.
right? Ma'am, could you please come forward? Come forward here and your name and address for the record. Are you one of the neighbor?
Yes. My name is Anna Stewart, my husband is John, and we live at 50 Cox Crescent, and we're here today in support of our neighbors. Now, I'm not, totally familiar with all the bylaws, but when I read the document from today, I don't feel from an aesthetic point of view, from an overdevelopment point of view, what our neighbors have done violates anything from my perspective. I walk the neighborhood and I'm more concerned about other blatant examples of violating the aesthetic view of the neighborhood. There are people who park cars beyond the width of their driveway, and maybe the driveway complies with the bylaws. I find that offensive. There are people who install doors on their garage doors to enter the house. So anyway, I just want to say we're in support of our neighbors.
Okay, thank you. So the homeowner, you can.
Good morning.
Your name, please?
My name is Gary Wynn, and this is my wife, Zabina Wynn, of 94 Corkett Drive. We also have 6 other signed support letters from our neighbours.
Sure. Secretary Treasurer will collect from you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Talk about the driveway?
Yeah.
My wife will explain about the driveway.
The driveway we resurfaced, similar to what was already there from the previous homeowner. We understand that it is wider than it's supposed to be. We didn't actually realize that at the time. We made it the same as it was. Originally to adjust the steps coming into the house to make it more accessible for me. I have some mobility issues due to cancer treatment from before, and my mom is 80, so we were doing that for that part, and then the landscaping on the side, we like to garden, so we took the grass part out and made a garden there instead. It's a little bit of a slower process than we had originally anticipated, so that garden part is not finished. However, the width of the driveway makes it easier for access out of automobiles, easier to access. The part of the driveway comes straight up into the stairs of the front of the house, and on the side of the house, you can walk straight to the back, to the side, and not kind of have to maneuver around. The garden part, we're still making the garden. It will be lush and green if you come and visit another time. It does have plants in it now. It is permeable. There's no base to it. It's simply we have our driveway part way, and the neighbor has the other half, and it goes divided in the middle.
Some days my wife needs a walker to get out of the car to come to the house, and the extended driveway would give us the ability for my wife to move the walk around. Also in the winter, you know, we show the driveway, but it's still hard when my wife has bad days, and it's hard to get her from the car to the house. So being closer to the house would have significant advantage on her lifestyle.
The house is on a big lot, and it's a big house. So the driveway is big, but it doesn't. I don't think it overpowers aesthetically.
Okay, you sit down.
I guess let's just hear staff because we did not staff, right? So let's just hear staff what their recommendations are, and then we can discuss. And ma'am, you can have a seat meantime. Okay.
It's harder to move around and come back.
You can just
stay in one place. It's really easy.
you can just sit this chair as well. Thank you, Stoffler. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Yeah, so through the chair and just for the total recommendations on the application. So staff are recommending approval in part of application A19-138 subject to the following conditions being imposed. One, so that variance 2 to permit a driveway width of 9.14 meters be refused. 2, that variance 5 to permit a 0.0 meters of permeable landscaping adjacent to the side lot line be refused. That the proposed front porch be of an open style construction, that drainage from the accessory structure shall flow onto the applicant's property, that the owner shall obtain a building permit for the existing accessory structure within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision, that the extent of variances 1, 3, and 4 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice, and finally that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. And just in relation to the driveway and the landscape strip, since that's kind of the brunt of the discussion. There are certain policies that are relatively clear within the official plan. So for example, section 4.2.1.14.3, the official plan that states that driveway design shall relate to the lot width and shall be sized appropriate with relation to that lot width. And there's other various kind of guidelines within the development design guidelines across the city that reiterate the same point of view. And those are then reflected within the intent of the zoning bylaw when it comes to regulating driveway width and the permeable landscaping strip on the side to ensure that driveways do relate to the width of the lot and that both those driveways and the impervious surfaces don't, and the cars parked on top of the driveways don't occupy the majority of the visual plane within the neighborhoods to ensure that we are keeping a certain level of aesthetic quality. So that is where we are not able to support those variances as relates to those policies and trying to maintain the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhoods.
Okay. Just a comment on the right side of the house where we are concerned about the permeable landscape. I see they put together some landscaping garden. Is that not sufficient and does not really solve the intent? Because what I see, even though they did extend with stamping concrete, the boulevard portion has been kept original. It has not been extended on the boulevard side. So to me, majority of the time I support the permeable aspect, but in this case I guess we have the space, the cap, the way it is. I think that's the better, and I know Ms. Corozola is the best person to answer all these, to end all these discussions. If we look at, normally we look 6 feet from the brick wall, and I guess it's not more than 6 feet between these two houses.
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, just for some clarification. So there is, although the variances have been requested, and I apologize, I was on vacation when these notices were drafted, and perhaps staff was being overly cautious, but there is some landscape open space provided between the driveway and the side lot line. They are maintaining 0.43 meters of the required 0.6 meters of permeable landscaping, according to this driveway design and what I see is partially under construction, which actually results in not a 9.14 meter wide driveway, but rather the driveway width, the parkable surface, is actually 8.71 meters, whereas the bylaw would typically permit 6.71. So they are about 2 meters too wide in the overall width. But the reduction in landscaped open space is actually very modest. So that being said, that is something that the committee can consider imposing, that this, if you choose to approve this driveway as currently configured, be maintained as currently configured, and that no expansion of the paved surface shall be permitted. I can also confirm for the committee's information that there have been no complaints relative to driveway width on this property. It was picked up through staff's inspection of the site for the proposed overhead construction in the front yard, but otherwise there have been no complaints associated with drainage or other encumbrances relative to this property. So that's just to clarify the numbers for you and how that works, but they are certainly maintaining some of the required side yard permeable between the two properties, and recognizing that that little oval that's been carved out between the two driveways does cross the property line.
Yeah, that was my second question, which you already answered, that if there is any complaint. So there's no complaint and there's no violation notice or anything, because they are basically just asking the front porch to be built. And that is something I feel that they are adding value to the property. It's not, so I am okay, even though I'm a bit concerned about little bit extra width off your driveway. That is something I'm not in agreement, but I can see the intent. The intent is not to misuse these. If we are granting something today, I don't see your intent is versus your next door neighbor. I can see they do park on
the grass.
On the grass with some gravel, I guess, just been put on the side. So I would rather say yes to something driveway like yours rather than looking at your neighbors. So, but again, it's up to the committee members, how you feel, and if there's any comment, concern, questions, more than welcome.
Through you, Chair.
Sure.
Thank you. I typically support staff in maintaining the minimum requirements, but in this case, I tend to agree with the comments made by other committee members. I don't feel that the driveway in this case actually overpowers the streetscape or the home. I think it's well done. I think there's a requirement for it. Again, you haven't touched the city-owned property at the base of the driveway, and there is some permeable landscaping there. So I would support all requests at this point.
Okay, so if this is the way committee wishes to move ahead, we would need some change in staff recommendations. So that need to be read. Do we need to Ms. Carzola, do we need to the variance to permit a driveway width 9.14?
You would delete that condition. So conditions 1 and 2 would no longer apply.
Entirely?
Entirely.
Yeah.
And then condition 6 would be amended to say that the extent of the variances, and that would be all of the variances, be limited to that shown on the attached sketch, on the sketch attached to the public notice rather, And that will then ensure that the existing driveway configuration is maintained for any future owners.
Okay. Sir, I guess all things are going in your favor so far?
Can I,
Please.
one of the, I don't know if it's still applied, one of the stipulation was to obtain a permit within 60 days for the porch roof. Could we do things a little bit slowly? Could we have a little longer for that, if that still is in effect? Because if we retain the permit, it only is valid for 6 months, and then we'd have to have construction like late this winter instead of early next spring. So on the porch cover.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may just clarify, the permit that's required is for the accessory building in the rear yard that was built. It's above the size that would, so it requires, it's large enough to require a building permit, is what I'm saying, which is why the building division has asked for a permit to be obtained rather quickly for that structure alone. There's no time limit on the permit to build the new porch. So that permit can be obtained at any time.
So I guess 60 days is good enough for that one. It's just, and your agent can help on that one.
For the shed. Okay.
It's about
However, through you,
the
Mr.
shed in
Chair,
your backyard.
if additional time is required, I'm certain if the committee wanted to consider an extension to allow 90 days to obtain that permit, that's certainly something you could
I'm okay for 90 days, but I guess 60 days is good enough time unless you really feel that you need extra time. Okay? So you understand and accept these conditions?
Did we talk about shed?
Yes?
He's saying,
No,
he's saying
sorry.
the permit for the shed.
Permit for the shed.
Yeah, that's what they were just
Oh, sorry.
referring to.
Okay,
Not the,
moving
just
off.
the size of it, not the where it needs
Okay.
to be.
Okay, so
I understand.
no problem. If no further discussion,
Motion to proceed to support with the amended variance.
motion to support by Mr. Power with amended conditions, seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor?
Thank you.
And I saw the England flag on your driveway. Congratulations for the recent World Cup victory. Cricket World Cup victory.
Cricket, we drew. We managed
Yes.
to draw against Australia, so I'm happy.
Calling application A19-139, 254-1900 Ontario Limited. Property is located at Sunpack Boulevard.
Morning again. I'm the representative here on behalf of the numbered company 254-1900 Ontario Limited, who also operate as, just for the future, Eagle Fleet Service and Eagle Travel Plaza. Before I begin, I guess I'd like to give a bit of background on the company and the nature of their business, just for the benefit of committee. Okay, so the company here is, I guess, a truck servicing business that was established in 1990, and they've since established service stops along the way from Windsor all the way through Sarnia, Tilbury. They have several in Windsor, 3 in Sarnia, and they've recently purchased a couple sites in Brampton and Caledon in Peel. Reason being is that most of their clients and their business does traffic through Peel. So it is a matter of just accommodating their clients and furthering business within the Peel region. They currently have actually a couple properties in Brampton. This is one of them, one on Sunpack, and the other one is on Highway 15, Castlemore, Old Castlemore Road, which is rather large. Both are similar in nature. That one has a warehouse use as well. And their objective, I guess, is long-term to establish both the sites and employ around about 100 to 130 people for warehousing, servicing of the truck stop. There is some commercial and restaurant use on the property as well. It's part of their overall site development. But I guess in this particular case, we're in front of the committee to request a temporary variance to allow storage, outside storage of truck trailers on their current property, which is going through a site plan application at the moment. So I'd say about maybe something like halfway through the process. So having that said, there is a need from their client base to have this temporary use on their property prior to the full development of the site plan itself. And the owners wish to use it temporarily for that purpose.
Just a question, why we need temporary if the application is already in process, as you mentioned?
Okay, so there's a bit of a difference between what the site plan will ultimately become. It will ultimately become a service stop, which will have an office portion to it, some showering facilities, and a fueling and a lube station. It's mostly just for quick stops for trucks that are doing long hauls and need to service and rest a bit, and then they can be on their way. But also in the meantime, because there isn't really anything like that on that stretch right now, there is a need for temporary parking of oversized vehicles, and they wish to use that. It's just vacant land right now. They wish to use that land until the site plan is developed for that purpose. So it's just it's I guess it's a need for their business and their clients.
So right now there's nothing on the site.
No, it's currently vacant.
And where they're being operated right now?
Like I said, they have several locations in Windsor, Sarnia, Chatham, Tilbury. They purchased sites in Brampton and Caledon, which I think Caledon has already been developed. And Brampton, they are going through site plan in this case and rezoning on Highway 50. So those applications have already gone in.
Okay. Any members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Well, I'll have more, but I'd like to hear staff's opinion on this.
Yes, through you, Chair. What length of time are you looking for in terms of this extension?
Well, I understand typically through variance, like we just put the whatever is allowable in terms of the I think it's 3 years, which is usually the case through staff, but that's flexible. So our site plan is obviously going to be developed before that, but I just put down whatever kind of would be the most allowable from staff and from the committee. Okay. So we can negotiate that, I guess. I'm flexible for that time period.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we go, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
So, through the chair, first of all, staff are recommending that application A19-139 be refused. So there's a couple of reasons for that. So first of all, with respect to the intent of the official plan, the property is designated as a business corridor in the official plan, and then highway and service commercial within the Airport Road and Highway 7 Business Center secondary plan. In that secondary plan, there's no real contemplation for permissions for outdoor storage, especially not as a standalone use. There are certain contemplations for large-scale retail operations that might have temporary outdoor operations, but that would just be essentially the display and sale of their wares for a temporary period. And as a result of that, can't say that the intent of the official plan is being maintained, as it is intending for it to be developed in that highway and service commercial use and not as a standalone outdoor storage operation. With respect to the zoning bylaw, so similar to the secondary plan, the lands are zoned as service commercial of the special section, which is essentially an extension of that intention in the secondary plan. Again, so there is the permission for service stations and motor vehicle washing facilities, which is what they are intending to go through with that site plan application. But through that site plan application, there is no contemplation for outdoor storage on site when that ultimate build-out happens. And considering that the zoning bylaw does not have any contemplation for outdoor storage, and the construction of the site plan also does not have any contemplation for outdoor storage, the intent of the zoning bylaw is not maintained. When it comes to desirability, considering the current state of the lands, where essentially they're fallow lands for all intents and purposes, there hasn't been any development whatsoever on there, there would be a significant amount of development that would be required in order for us to be satisfied that if an outdoor storage operation were to be established there, that we could be satisfied that it would be responsibly developed. So things like we would have to confirm grading on site, we would have to confirm certain screening, location of accesses, potential requirements for servicing, all that type of, issues that would normally be dealt with through a site plan and zoning bylaw amendment and all those regular planning application processes. So considering that it's being discussed that this application would be just for a purely temporary period until that future site plan gets constructed, and considering there would be quite a lot of works that would be required to even establish this temporary outdoor storage to begin with, staff can't state that this would be desirable for the appropriate development of the land, because essentially it would be a significant investment to establish that outdoor storage in the first place. And then it would be, there would be motivation for the owner to continue that outdoor storage use even with potential development of that site plan, and considering all that investment that they put into it. So just difficulty getting that. And then minor in nature, in the same breath, there's all of those significant concerns that we would have that essentially leads us to not being able to deem this minor in nature.
Okay. Would you like to respond?
Sure, just
on the comments?
A couple comments, yeah. So I guess in terms of the OP, the secondary plan does state that the highway and service commercial designation is there, and that also states that that there should be some kind of orderly development for a broad range of the commercial, service commercial, highway, and in some cases even in industrial uses with the commercial component. So, you see sites like that that do have outside storage, that fall under those kind of uses and the kind of those designations within the secondary plan throughout Brampton. So we feel that does meet the intent, generally with the OP. In terms of the zoning, it is service commercial, as Mr. Daniel said, and we are asking for a temporary relief in that sense. It will not kind of be a long-term use. And lastly, I think more importantly, is that the preparation of the site, there will be some requirements and some work needed to be done on the site to prepare it for even temporary storage. But because we're going through a site plan process currently, we could tie that in, and some of the work will be done as part of both processes. So, the work has to be done, yes, but we're going to be doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's what something I was going to ask, because if you're seeking temporary, for the temporary period, right now, as we see, the land is in a condition, it requires a lot of work.
Yeah.
And one of the concern is, obviously you don't want to be seen as a parking lot.
Correct.
And the drainage and all other aspects. So, it's not going to be too costly for a temporary period, you feel?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't feel it would be. That's why I've passed around the potential draft conditions where we do state we would address screening, drainage, access concerns as part of this application. And even obviously for the future site plan, we'd have to address those as well. But That's why it's kind of a bit of a cost savings in that way, rather than a cost, because we have to construct some work on the property. We have to do some work on the property anyway.
I'll have some questions sorry, please go ahead, Mr. Steiger.
Thanks for your indulgence. I think there would be a fair amount of site works that would have to be done, and I don't think they're directly related to or correlate to the site plan that's in with us right now. So you'd have to do screening, which would likely mean fencing and probably berming to get an effective screen of any trailers. It's a fairly exposed site, given that there's nothing going on. And as far as from what I've seen from the site plan and from what I can recollect, there's nothing like that on that site plan. That's a bunch of commercial buildings, with a filling station and so forth. So in that sense, they're unrelated. And this would require a full site plan approval from the city as well. So you'd have to do this one, and you're parking the other site plan. It's not just a matter of parking a bunch of trailers on the property. I don't think that's, from our city standpoint, that's not an appropriate way to do it. And if it even is work to be considered, the appropriate mechanism is a temporary bylaw approach, because there are different tests than the tests that we have in front of us as a minor variance. Having said that, I don't know if that's something we would necessarily support through that process, but just as an aside, that is probably the better approach to analyze this and then have council decide whether it's appropriate or not. But just in terms of site works, I don't think it's be insignificant site works that would have to happen here.
Mr. Steiger, I hear what you're addressing, but at the same time, about 3 years back, I think the immediate next property came to committee and it's been deferred, and then they come back. A few years back, I believe maybe 3 years back or 3.5 years back, for the same outside storage they were looking. About this neighborhood, recently we extended about 2-3 months back another property on Sunpack for another 5 years, more close to the Williams Parkway on the right hand side. I recall reviewing that application 2 times in my time on the board. So if I see the development on that property where it is simply just a trailer being parked and just a fence, and we keep extending for 5 years, versus something like this where we already have site plan application in front of us, in front of us, but to the city, that they need a permanent, it's not that they just want to keep it just as a parking storage, versus their intent is to develop the property, which is good for, I guess, for everybody, and especially for the city. If a business coming or staying within the city, that's what my thought is. And I have some more questions, but I was just going through some social media from the councillors. So recently in Ward 9 and 10, they had, both the councillors had some sort of meeting with the truckers, and I saw the picture, Ms. Corzola was in one of the picture there with, I guess, the lady, she's not here today. So I saw this post from Regional Councillor Dillon. It says, do you know that 70% of goods moved in Ontario travel through Peel region, and 10% of all Brampton's jobs are trucking related? So that is where I see, and I can see the number of people involved with this industry. So that, like, this is more of a comment. I know staff cannot answer in relation to this, but the couple of questions I have in my mind is, about 2-3 months back, there was a public meeting before we have the planning committee on Mondays. I saw in the main floor at the main level in the public gallery, there were some pictures were displayed, and one of and I was passing through and I saw one of the property located right behind this property where they keep all those cars. I believe there was some sort of, I guess, maybe temporary zoning bylaw. That's why that came before the council. And I noticed right next to this property, there's city has some right of way and the staff, and I did have some questions to the staff because that came to us in the past as well. So what I learned, eventually there is going to be some roundabout cul-de-sac next to this property, or maybe the proposal is to put together a road, and then maybe you can answer better on that.
So there is an application for temporary use bylaw for the neighboring land 0 auction lane. They had actually they had had a previous variance approval for that. And it was on our recommendation, they said you're better off exploring that through the temporary use bylaw process, and they chose to do that for those that land. That's a parking of cars, which is, and tucked a bit more into the corner. It's a bit less visible from, Queen and so forth than this site would be for parking of trailers. Yeah, in relation to that, there is a potential on the north side of this property that eventually there would be a public road, and I think part of the site plan would be that they would have to dedicate some lands towards that. So there would be a small leg that potentially would go into the lands to the west and also service the lands to the north as part of a city road. That is correct. So I would note that some of the other ones that minor variances for truck outside storage, those are on industrial lands. This is zoned for highway and service commercial uses. And other ones where they've been supported, like they've been on progress chord as well, where they've been tucked in the back and, less out of sight, or the ones on some pack, there's less of an exposure because it's only in the narrower portion. They've had to put screening on that. You'd have to do a substantial amount of screening on this site. And given the context of the OP policies and so forth, and also noting from the experience of those, that those keep on coming back for extensions. What are we putting ourselves into here in terms of developing this? So,
I completely understand where staff's opinion, and I tend to agree with that we don't want to just keep granting these temporary based, and then we don't see that desire to develop eventually in a good, better shape, like nice buildings, obviously, as close to Queen Street, or any other part wherever we are granting temporary 3 or 5 years terms. But just as you mentioned, there will be a public road right next to the property. So that means, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that may delay their site plan application, which is already in front of city.
So that there may be, so I don't have all the information on that site plan application, but I think there is discussion of whether that road gets built right away, or it's just dedicating lands toward, or some interim arrangement before the road gets fully built. So I'm not sure if there has been a requirement to construct that road as part of that site plan, actually, but there may be a situation where either land gets given or just a temporary arrangement is made first. So,
Mr. Power?
Through you, Mr. Chair. As a Brampton resident, I'd rather see the trucks being parked down there than on my street. And I see it more and more frequently all over Brampton. If you go along Mississauga Road, they're parking on the gravel all along Mississauga Road, obstructing traffic, obstructing view. So how does the staff feel about the possible conditions that were presented today?
And meantime, if I can ask a couple of questions to the agent. In the event if this is not approved, what could be the implications for your client? Is that something, because the question is, if the application is already in front of city, why temporary? Is that something like urgently required, or if not, then what could happen?
Well, it is an urgent need for the business, number one. But number two, the application was submitted, I guess, some time ago, not too long ago, but it has been kind of sitting with the city for a bit, as well as with the owners and ourselves. But the process is taking a little longer than usual, and I guess in the meantime, there's been some other opportunities presented to the owners. This is more on the business end, where they can develop other sites in Bolton and Milton more immediately. They'd rather stay here because that's where their client base is, and more of their business is going to be conducted in the future. And obviously, I know the city would like to get a tax base from that too. So we're trying our best to retain them and kind of keep them within Brampton and I guess their Peel site as well, and their Caledon site as well. Again, it's just more convenient for their clients, for themselves, and if they can stay in Brampton and operate quicker, then that's obviously a plus.
Is there currently people from Brampton working with this firm, like Brampton-based?
Yeah, they have a sales office on Bramley Road, so they currently employ staff there. But as I mentioned before, there are two sites: Sunpath, this one here, and the one on Highway 50, and Old Castlemore, which is going to be like a similar fueling station with warehousing. That'll have about 100 people employed there, and then this one will have around 30, I think, 25 to 30, something like that. So those are the projected kind of numbers for their business.
As you mentioned, pretty much the sites you mentioned is all along 401. So having based in Brampton, is that something where they have the clientele, or just corridor, or?
I guess it's just their clients. There's a lot of traffic through Brampton in terms of logistics companies and trucking. So, 401 is obviously a major route, but a lot of the stops do come through here and end here or carry on to the next municipality. So it's a strategic spot for them as well to kind of set up shop.
Just one question. If you can explain the nature of the business, because this is not just truck parking, that someone has the space where they just want to rent it out of the space, or they want to use for their trucking business. So my understanding is it's not just the trucking business, as you mentioned.
Yes, that's correct. So basically, it is a service stop essentially, which provides drivers the opportunity to use the facilities. They're minor facilities. There's a showering facility, a restaurant, a bit of a rest stop, and in some cases a fuel station. Okay. And like maybe there might be some minor areas we'll have, for minor mechanical things like lube and oil. Those will be on certain sites as well. So this site in the future would potentially have one. Minor stuff. But it's just more of a stop to accommodate the drivers.
Like one of those truck stops or the fuel stations we have seen, one on Airport Road, close to 407.
That's right.
I guess something like that.
Similar, yeah, very similar.
Where the driver can have some rest for a few hours before they take the load, continue.
Correct. Yeah.
Something like that.
That's right.
Facility?
That's right. Yeah, very similar. Should mention one more thing. The temporary storage for this variant specifically, it's vehicles will be stored there, but on a very temporary basis. They'll be moving most of the time. I think they're not there overnight. Most of the time, it's over maybe 12-hour stint, something like that, and then it's kind of more of a quick stop, temporary kind of parking, if you will, and then they go on their way afterwards.
Okay, like the same way as those stops works, for a few hours breaks or something. Or
exactly. Yeah. Something like that, yeah.
With those.
They're not long-term kind of.
I get it. So, like nowadays, as the requirements are with those logbooks and stuff, where the or the driver needs a few hours.
Yeah, I think, I'm not too familiar with that, but I know a bit about it. So there's an electronic logbook where they have to, I guess, sign into now, and it's to prevent the drivers from driving extra long distances, and it's so that all the logging is transparent to the owners and the Ministry of Transportation, I guess. So I think they're tweaking the rules about that in the end of the year, and it's going to be a little more stringent, and it's for safety issues, I guess.
Well, I honestly feel staff has some genuine concerns, and I tend to agree with them. But at the same time, we just don't want to limit, at my personal level, I know it's for temporary period, but at the same time, what I see is extensive amount of work and money need to be spent on the site, and I just don't want to see that. Well, maybe that's the cost of business. Your clients are probably looking, but in order to fulfill city's requirement, there will be extensive amount of work the way I see it. But I guess maybe if those things can be used later on in your permanent site plan, if all those things can be used, for example, at the later stage, I see the stormwater management concerns. If those are, and the screening, if later on that can be used, I guess maybe then the cost can be the same stuff can be used, or the same arrangements can be used at the later stage. Committee members, any other comment, concerns? There was questions by Mr. Power and staff.
So staff was asked about what potential conditions we'd want to see. With regard to condition 1, so I just want to reiterate that staff have strong concerns with this. It's unclear of exactly what's going on this site. The business need aspect it seems like it's opportunism they have a change in plans and want to work on another property somewhere else in their holdings outside the municipality and want to use this spot to just park trailers for the time being until they get back to it. I'm not sure that that's appropriate for the city. I think they should pursue their site plan application and construct the building that they have, and we can assist in moving that forward. I don't know where the delays have been and so forth in that. So having said that, and having made the comments about how much work that is going to be involved in this, in trying to accommodate this, these are the recommended conditions for the committee to consider. First is that the outside storage not be 3 years, but be more in the order of 1 year. The second condition, just simply state that no cleaning, maintenance, or repair of oversized vehicles shall occur. The third condition will be that the outside storage shall be screened from public view. And then a further condition is that site plan approval shall be obtained within 180 days or to a further date as at the discretion of the Director of Development Services. And then the final 2 can remain as is. So those are the recommended changes for consideration.
What Mr. Steiger, for this kind of site, and I understand, and that's what I'm going to ask to the agent, as like we don't want that this site to be used just as a temporary location or as a stepping stone, or maybe there's just something else going on in their mind. They secure for the business reason some other location out of Brampton, but I think 1 year is too less for this kind of work. The amount of money they are going to spend. Normally, in another yards, we extend 5 years. If we are going to go ahead with this, I think 3 years is okay time for me. But at the same time, if we can expedite somehow the site plan application, which is already we have with us, so it may work faster and work in order for us to achieve the permanent solution. But from Mr. Steiger's comment to the agent, for the business reasons, if they have something else in their mind and they just want to keep using as temporary stuff, 3 years goes by fast, or 2 years, or whatever the time, you will be back in front of us.
Yeah. I think the intent is not, okay, first of all, the intent is not to keep this as a temporary site and just keep renewing it for site storage. The intent is to, like, we're going to develop this site as intended through the site plan application. That's a better use of the land for the owners and for their business. So the intent is not to have this as a spot where they're going to pursue another area down, 401 or Bolton or wherever and operate the site plan there instead. They want to stay in Brampton, they want to develop it here, and this is where a lot of their clients are and pass through. So their main business is what is proposed in the site plan. That's what they want to keep here. In the interim, as I said, there's a need for some of their clients to use this as a temporary outside storage for their vehicles, and they want to accommodate that. And like I said, it's on a temporary basis. We are somewhat flexible in the years, even though 3 would be obviously what we asked for. There is some flexibility, and the other conditions that Mr. Steiger had mentioned, we are generally okay with, except I missed number 2. I don't know if it was scratched out or.
Well, planning staff is looking through you. If I can just request or offer some clarification or express my concern with how I hear discussions going. So the variance that's been requested is for the storage, and specifically to request that trailers be stored on this property for a temporary period. We're talking now about oversized motor vehicles and even repair of those vehicles. Trailers are not oversized motor vehicles. So if this variance is actually to permit trucks and trailers to now be stored on this property, then I would suggest that the variance that's been asked for will either need to be amended for clarification, and I would leave it to committee to decide whether appropriate public notice has been given. But the variance is quite specific and limited to trailer storage. It is not for the purpose of a temporary truck stop. It is not for the purpose of servicing and allowing a rest stop for truckers. It is for the outside storage of trailers. The conditions that have been proposed obviously reference the repair of oversized motor vehicles. So if you're intending to do that, I would certainly agree that that condition remain if the variance application is amended to include the storage of oversized motor vehicles. And as far as the variance being approved to the extent indicated on the attached public notice, well, there's no plan attached to the public notice. It's simply a green outline surrounding the border of the property. So there's really no plan or purpose of including that condition when really, for the most part, committee and city staff do not understand how and where this storage will be located, whether there will be screening, which obviously would be a condition of any site plan approval, but site plan approval simply to allow the storage of trailers and or trucks, if we want to clarify it in that respect, will be required over and above the site plan for the ultimate development of the site, which is currently in process.
Normally, before I give the opportunity for my committee members, in the drafted condition 2, oftentimes we add washing. No washing is also permitted on, or that comes under cleaning itself.
So the complication there is that the zoning bylaw that applies to this land allows a motor vehicle washing establishment.
Okay.
Obviously, which is to be developed in conjunction with the building, but certainly, yes, adding no maintenance, repairs, or washing. I would include cleaning, because otherwise they're going to be unloading trucks and debris, and everything is going to wind up on the site with no permanent facilities in place to accommodate either the refuse or the other materials that are unloaded or cleaned. So I would have no problem. It does say no cleaning.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can include washing as well.
On my before if the rest of the committee member wishes to speak, what I genuinely look in this application, there's one another facility, I guess similar to this one, located on Delta Park at the corner. Delta Park is just a block west from this location after the bridge. So if you go from Sunpack, make a right on Queen Street, after the bridge make a left, and you go a bit further, that's where it's located. I guess their eventual object is to get some facility, something like that. And there is some genuine demand in the neighborhood. For example, we have CN close by, and we have large trucking facility near Intermodal and Airport, and Queen is basically a truck route, and so forth. So I guess if it's just a parking lot, then they could have some other options, but since the application is already before us and we are already reviewing it, I guess it's quite cost for them, but I tend to agree, and I'm in support of this application to grant temporary period. But again, I would just like to amend these oversized versus truck trailers, because even though it's not being parked, but even if someone is coming there after getting the fuel and stopping there for 4 or 5 hours, if someone is going from Montreal to US, that's what normally they stop in between. If something like that is coming, I just want to have the proper wording if we can amend that at this point, and then we can move. But I guess committee members have some questions. Mr. Powwow, would you like to say something?
Just to the agent, how long ago was the site plan submitted to the city?
It was in January or February, I believe.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Okay. And is the city, is there a way that we can help expedite that?
Well, I think we're kind of both going as best as we can at the moment. It's just, sometimes it's a little difficult during the summer months, perhaps, I'm not sure. But I think staff are generally, pursuing the site plan application as much as we are. So we're going to work with them and try to get it done as quick as possible.
Okay. And then I guess the staff would be okay with the amendments. Would you be okay with the revised conditions?
There's actually just one I need to clarify with the owner who's here. Can you give me 1 minute?
Sure, and Ms. Corzola wanted to.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize if I wasn't clear earlier, it's not simply a matter of amending the conditions. I'm suggesting that the applicant needs to amend their application before you. They've only requested the outside storage of trailers. So it's up to them, number one, if they want to request an amendment to their application, to request a variance to permit outside storage of oversized vehicles and trailers. And then number two, the decision would need to be made by the committee to determine whether or not you believe that sufficient notice has been given to the public of the nature of the variances that are before you today.
What I feel on that oversized motor vehicles are the trailers, even though it's two separate, but the intent is, or the understanding is pretty much the same. So I am okay with that, as long if the rest of the committee feels the same, and the applicant wishes to amend that portion. So we are going with the right variance. We don't want we just don't want to leave gray area.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think in terms of the discussion that we had, I tend to not support outside storage, but that's, in a lot of cases, the applications have come before us where they've already existed, and we have to make decisions of whether to go for another temporary period of time. In this case, it seems the intent is completely there to develop the property, and while the approvals are underway, that the site is used for temporary storage. So my question of the applicant would be, and I think the staff made the comment, there's a drawing that's attached. but it doesn't indicate what the terms of dealing with the site in terms of screening and stormwater management, any of the aspects. So even if we were to consider the possible conditions, there would need to be some sort of a process, some sort of a drawing in place for staff to get a comfort level and for us to know that these aren't just words on a piece of paper.
Of course, no, I completely understand that. This was just by way of the format for the variance sketch that we typically provide. So I probably should have put another condition in the draft there, whereby we would provide a plan, whether it be some kind of conceptual site plan showing the layout of the parking, the access route, things like that. Obviously, we have to address fire
site
risk.
plan, something?
I'm sorry?
Something like limited?
Well, that's just the type of application for site plan. I'm not sure how long staff would typically take to process that through condition. If it is, just a drawing and the conditions I mentioned in terms of stormwater access and screening, we can address those pretty quickly, I believe. So that's fine. But I do understand the concerted need for a plan detailing the parking layout, the access routes, and things like that. And we're happy to provide that, and that can be added as a condition as well.
And about amending your variance you're seeking in terms of oversized vehicle versus...
I think that is a good point as well. I think we would want to include at least it's a truck trailer. I know it says trailers there, and oversized vehicle is part of the condition, which would then be a truck and trailer or something similar. But I think through the committee, if you were able to include truck and trailers or truck trailer as part of the amended wording, then we would obviously want that in there.
Okay. Just a question to Ms. Myers. Ms. Myers, if it's up to the committee to add, since the nature is similar and the intent?
Chair, if it is the committee's decision that they feel that public notice recirculation is not required, then we would have to request an amendment from the applicant to include any additional verbiage.
Okay. So as applicant has already indicated, I'm okay because the intent is saying it's not like completely different. So I personally okay if the committee feels the same with being amended now. Now, Mr. Powell, what we are talking about, the variance they're seeking at this point is the actual request. The actual request. Adding the word truck trailers beside just trailers, I believe. So I guess, do we need a motion, or I think the committee's...
Chair, if you can, what I would like to know at this point in time, because there's been so much discussion on this application, and I'm quite frankly confused. I want to know from the applicant exactly what he's requesting through this application.
Yeah.
I want to know specifically the wording for the variance.
So you should have come a bit prepared.
I
honestly feel
there's a bit of a bit of discrepancy in what I have here, but it is in line with what Ms. Corzola said. The wording would be something like to permit the temporary outside storage of truck and trailer use, whereas the bylaw does not permanently permit that use. Something like that.
Okay.
And I would ask for clarity through you, Mr. Chair, to the Secretary Treasurer that yes, it be for truck and truck trailers, and then specifically as defined in the bylaw, oversized motor vehicles.
And further to that, so are we amending this application to permit the temporary outside storage of trailers and oversized motor
Truck trailers
vehicles?
and oversized.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you.
It would read, to permit the temporary outside storage of trucks and truck trailers, in parentheses, oversized motor vehicles.
And in terms of rest of the conditions in the drafter.
Through you, Mr. Chair, before we proceed to to formulating conditions. I need to get this signed by the agent as well as yourself.
Sure.
We need to have a record of this because we're not recirculating public notices. We have no way of knowing what
Okay, sure.
what we're asking for here.
Sure, no problem.
Is being suggested, because there seems to be just a comfort level required. I believe that there's intent to develop this property, and I understand wanting to use the property in such time as the application is moving forward. My other question, though, is as much as the intent is there, to get the approval for the temporary use, what is that going to entail in terms of time frame? And how does that work with the site plan application that's underway? So if we think we have another year left in the site plan application, and we've sort of mentioned 180 days to get the temporary use, so you're 6 months to get the temporary use and another year to get the final site plan application. But those are my timelines. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, those are, I think that's, being on the more conservative side. Basically...
Sorry, if you can please sign first, so Ms. Myers can have the seat. And just a comment, I guess these things can be addressed at the site plan approval stage as well. Thank you.
So through the chair, I just want to note for the record that the agent representing the applicant has now amended application A19-139 to permit the temporary outside storage of trucks and truck trailers, and in parentheses, I have oversized motor vehicles.
Fine with that?
So please say it.
Yes, we're good with that, yeah.
Okay, please continue.
Sorry, yeah, so in terms of the timelines, our work can be done rather quickly. It's just for staff to process. We still have to kind of get the requirements once it's submitted and just to see what comments they would have on our drawings for the temporary use. But if we're providing what I would listed in the draft conditions, I don't see it taking too long on our end. Again, I'm not sure what staff's time frame is to process that. Maybe best to...
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr. Steiger?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So it should just not be the submission of some drawings to the city, not for something of this scale. There's no recourse for us to then enforce any screening requirements or anything like that, because there would not be an ability to enter into an agreement and obtain securities for it, which I think would be absolutely necessary even for a temporary use here. There's no access, there's nothing on this property. We'd have to build and establish those, make sure that work's done properly, and so forth. So this is a significant development on its own right. So it has, and strong recommendation is that it's a formal site plan approval through the city.
Mr. Chair, just if I might follow up on the site plan approval process. We've heard that the application has gone in some 8 months ago. What is the typical expected timeline to obtain a site plan approval, assuming that those discussions are going along well?
8 to 10 months, something like that. It's probably a typical, depends on what the issues are. So I don't know what the situation with this one is in terms of, often on our end, it's reliant on us moving forward is timely resubmissions from applicants and so forth. But I suspect something like that would be, it may be somewhat shorter because it'd be a bit more scoped. It'd be fairly, it's just a parking lot. There's not buildings involved and so forth. So the review's not involving certain groups, which a full site plan involves. But there would certainly be landscaping, engineering, transportation would be the involved groups on it. So there may be not as long a process as normally, but it's hard to say. I would say something in the 8-month range.
And in terms of the current site plan application, if that's been underway for 8 months, what is the general typical anticipation of getting to?
Having, not knowing the situation with this one, I don't know where things are at with it, but that's probably nearing the, I would typically expect that on a site plan like that one, that would be, there'd be a few more months to deal with some of what would there be the remaining issues. So to me, something that's in the process for like a truck refueling station for 8 months, barring any major issues, it would be, you know, closer towards the end of the process, and there'd be like a 3 or 4 month more period left to go. But that depends on whether things have been submitted and, you know, have comments been addressed properly and so forth. So.
And perhaps to the applicant, what is your?
I think we're maybe halfway there. I wouldn't say towards the end, because we made a submission. We did make a site plan submission, and it was only at first. So again, it's kind of undetermined. It's hard to gauge it, but not a couple months. It'd definitely be like towards at the end of the year or even early next year. And then we have to, that's just to get approval. So we probably wouldn't even service it at the end of this year either. I'm not sure. We're okay with like a limited approach to the site plan for this purpose. We understand it's going to be scaled down, so that's something that's obviously, you know, we have to come to terms with. So.
What I really like to see, I don't want the business owner to choose any other location over Brampton for their permanent eventual business, as we do need. I'm pro-business, and we do need things here. Then I don't want to. It's not that I'm not supporting other developments, but I would rather have something in Brampton rather than having in Milton or Cambridge. So, in terms of rest of the things can be looked after, but what I like to see is the exact draft conditions, so the committee members can feel comfortable and like what we are suggesting, if we are all in agreement. And just one, if it's going to take roughly around 8 to 10 months or 12 months, and then they do need time to build the site, the proposed building and stuff. So I guess the time period is okay, so at least they can, at the same time, they can continue their operation from this site. Mr. Powell?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The agent suggested 3 years on variance number 1. Staff suggested 1 year. What if we go in the middle and go 2 years?
I agree with you on that, but if it's something in a smaller unit or some business running from some within the plaza, I would definitely okay for even 1 year or 2 years, but having the fact that this is something, I don't want them to just come back after a few months here again for the same, and especially when they are going through the construction and in that phase, even after being approved.
So leave it at 3 years.
Yeah, so that's what my personal suggestion is. But if we can have some more clarity over these proposed conditions.
To the agent, you wanted to confer with your client?
In terms of the timeline?
In terms of your conditions and
Sure.
what's been talked to, because in that way, we can have them confer, we can get to the other ones, and then they can come back with their proper amended ones? Is that possible or no?
Yeah, sure. If that's fine by us. Yeah.
No, but sorry, I didn't get like what exactly to be confirmed. It's just, I guess.
He wanted to talk to his agent.
No, but if we can just work it out with staff on these conditions, and I guess, and if that is acceptable to you, we should be okay.
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair. If it's the conditions that staff had kind of read through before, with obviously the inclusion of a site plan coming in showing a more detailed layout and even through like a limited approach, and like we're okay with that.
Okay.
And the other ones are okay as amended, so like we don't have any other issues with what was proposed.
Okay, sure. Ms. Corozola, if you can please help us out with some wording, the proper wording. What we can do in on the condition, if that's what helpful.
Sure.
Mr. Steiger, are we okay on that? So it's 11:47, we'll be back at 12. If meantime, we can work it out on this condition and then we'll be back.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so is there a motion from committee that is being supported to approve this application, subject to whatever staff comes up to with conditions, or is,
Well, we'd
I
like
haven't
to-
heard from committee as a whole whether that in fact is the direction that's being taken. I certainly understand that the chair is supportive of the application moving forward and is asking for some conditions.
Well, that's what my understanding is, the committee's, as Mr. Power indicated, and so is me. So if we can have, but again, I would like to see the conditions, and if that's acceptable to the applicant and somewhat to the staff at the same time. I just don't want to, I want staff to have the control over it as well at the same time. So it's not that they can just enjoy it forever and by all means. So that's why we just like to have some of those conditions, like genuine conditions, like not too strict on them. So I just want them to continue their operation over here. And then if maybe with this application, staff and the applicant will be working more together in more efficient manner. I'm not saying that we don't, but in order for us to work on the permanent site plan application.
Thank you for the clarification. I understand planning staff is working on some conditions.
Thank you, thank you. So we'll be back at 12. Thank you. Back and continue. Do we have some drafted conditions? Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
Please.
I'll read those out. First condition is that the outside storage of trucks and truck trailers, in brackets, oversized motor vehicles, be allowed for a period of 3 years from the date of the decision of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
The second condition is that no cleaning, washing, maintenance, or repair of trucks and truck trailers shall be permitted. The third condition is that the outside storage be screened from view from the street. The fourth condition is that a site plan application shall be submitted within 90 days of the committee's decision, and the site plan shall be approved and implemented within 240 days of the committee's decision, or within an extended period as approved by the Director of Development Services. And then the fifth condition is that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee will render the approval null and void.
Just a question, why 240 days?
Well, that's about, 8 months, so let's get it done in a quick fashion, I guess. So.
Mm-hmm.
And also make sure that it is actually completed.
Okay. So do you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, just one point of clarification. I missed the 90-day part on the item number 4 at the beginning.
So the number 4 is that a site plan application shall be submitted within 90 days of the committee's decision. That's there.
That's good. So all those things can be addressed in the site plan. What we had some concerns. Yeah. So if any other discussion, then we can certainly do. But if not, then looking for a motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed, support the amended
Conditions? Motion to support with the amended condition by Mr. Power, seconded by Mr. Cobb.
Yep.
All in favor? This is approved, sir.
Thank you.
Please work with the timeline, and I'm sure you're addressing all those staff's concerns in your permanent. This is just a temporary solution,
Yes,
and
of course.
the only thing is we just want to, for the business point of view. Okay, thank you.
Calling application A19-141, Forsyth Estates, Inc. Properties located at Atmar Drive and Palechki Drive.
Please go ahead.
Yes, so we're requesting a variance for this site, which is part of an ongoing site plan as well, for a block of townhouses, to permit a side yard, a reduced side yard setback of 5 meters to a property abutting an RE2 zone, where we typically would require 10 meters for that side yard setback.
Sure. Committee members, any comment, question, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff have reviewed the application against the 4 tests of a minor variance and have found that the application is supportable in part, subject to the following conditions being imposed. Number 1, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Number 2, that the owner finalize site plan approval under City File SP 18-118 and execute a site plan agreement within 180 days of the final date of committee's decision or within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. And number 3, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee will render the approval null and void.
Thank you. Are you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, those are fine.
Okay, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to approve staff's recommendation by Ms. Doffler, seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor?
Thank you.
Calling application A19-142, Truman Investments, Inc. Property is located at 181 Queen Street East.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Kachuk. I'm from Bailey Designs. I'm here on behalf of my client, Joanne Evans of Century 21, and the current property owner, Louis Dugan of Truman Investments. We're here to seek relief for the property at 181 Queen Street East for 3 parking spaces that we cannot provide on the site, and relief for 7 parking spaces that don't meet the minimum length. The site has a 2-story building with a basement that is currently occupied by the Staffing Edge. The existing parking consists of 24 spaces, and there are currently 30 staff. The proposed use would change the building from all professional general office on both floors to a combination of professional office on the main floor and lower level, and real estate offices on the upper floor. Approximately half of the staff will be working remotely. Therefore, we would have less staff occupying the building than is currently there. The building footprint will not change, and all proposed work is interior alterations. So I'd like to point out on this little map here that there is a bus stop at the corner of Truman, right here at the corner of Truman and Queen Street East, which is right next door to the building at 181. As well, there's 8 other bus stops within 500 meters. The site is also a 15-minute walk to the downtown core and overall has good transit services. I have another map here. So here on this map, it shows 3 other parking structures. So this is a parking garage over here that's an 84-meter walk to our parking lot. Another parking garage here at 169 Queen Street and 157 Queen Street, which both offer additional parking options. Our client is securing 10 parking passes for her staff that are there on a day-to-day basis to be able to keep most of the parking available for people coming in quickly.
Okay. Committee members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff have reviewed the application and find it does meet the 4 tests in the established in the Planning Act, and we do have a number of recommended conditions. One, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. 2, that the requirement for parking for any combination of uses permitted in the Service Commercial 383 zone be calculated at the applicable parking rate in accordance with the zoning bylaw and shall not exceed 27 parking spaces. 3, that sign stating that the space is for small cars only be installed for any space that is less than 5.4 meters in depth within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. 4, that the parking lot be restriped in conformance with the sketch attached to the public notice within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. And 5, failure to comply with and maintain the condition of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
We are fine with these recommendations.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, which brokerage is this? Century 21?
Century 21 is purchasing the building, yes.
But what's the brokerage? Like Millennium or, because I know.
It's Joanne Evans,
Okay,
Century
that's
21.
Millennium. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. They are on Rutherford and Steeles at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, if no further discussion, motion to proceed with staff recommendation by Mr. Power, seconded by Ms. Doffler. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-144, Daniel's Choice Mount Pleasant Corporation. Property is located at the northeast corner of Beauvais Drive West and Lagerfield Drive.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Arlie Hack. I'm a planner at GSCI Glenshire & Associates. We're here representing Daniel's Choice Mount Pleasant Corporation for the subject property, which is known as Block 4, Plan 43-1927. It's located on the northeast corner of Beauvais Drive West and Lagerfeld Drive, just south of Mount Pleasant GO train station. The applicant is currently undergoing a site plan application with the city and in order to support a transit supportive development, and the variances are required just to facilitate a form of development that suits the city as well as our applicant. I have read the report and we can speak on the application, go through the variances, answer any questions, but I'm happy to speak on it after we hear from staff on their report and their proposed recommendations.
Okay, any question, comment, concern? Seeing none? I guess no one in the audience? Like both of you are together?
Yeah.
But still, anyone in the audience? Seeing none? Staff, could you please read your comments?
Thank you, and through the chair, staff are in support of application A19-144, subject to the following conditions being imposed. 1, that variances 1, 3, and 6 shall only be permitted within an area bound by the private street to the north, Lagerfeld Drive to the west, a 30-meter setback from the private street to the south, and an 80-meter setback from Lagerfeld Drive to the east. 2, that variances 2 and 5 shall only apply to building D as shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. 3, that the extent of variances 7 and 8 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And 4, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. And the only other additional comment that I would add above that is that those conditions have essentially been crafted in such a manner to ensure that the site plan stays within a relatively same shape that it has been provided, but also recognizing the fact that the site plan application has not yet been approved, and it's my understanding that there's still a few minor issues that are being looked at. So we wanted to be flexible in some manner to allow minor changes that may have to be made, but then to tie down certain other issues that seem to be more kind of set in terms of agreement, and ones that could have other implications should they not be tied down to the sketch that's drawn. So.
Thank you. You understand and accept these conditions?
Yep.
Okay, no further discussion. Looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support staff recommendation by Ms. Doffler, seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor?
All right, thank you.
If no further applications, looking for a motion to adjourn by Mr. Power, seconded by Mr. Cobb. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned.